Hey everyone, welcome to Broadband Deployment News. Today's topic is pole attachments because the FCC has scheduled this as being a topic in their next meeting, and it's been an issue that's been ongoing, so it'll be good to get some resolution on that. I'll be right back and we'll talk about that. Thanks for joining me. Rick Uzzi here with Zquorum and Broadband Deployment News. Pole attachment disputes have been an ongoing thing because you've got, generally what you have is you've got one entity, like maybe a utility, could be a telephone company, could be a power company, something like that, that's got power poles or telephone poles, and then you've got another entity, maybe a cable company that wants to attach to that to get their broadband service on that pole, and there have been disputes about, should somebody be able to attach, and what do they pay? Do they share the cost? What about if, adding that new line on there would mean that the pole has to be replaced? Who pays the cost of that? What about if that's not the only reason the pole needs to be replaced? So there's been a lot of back and forth on that, and the FCC now has scheduled in their next meeting as part of the agenda something to cover that. So I was going to talk about that today, show you a little bit about the notice about that, and just provide the documents if you want to go read more, because there's a lot to read about if this is of interest to you. But we will talk about that. So you can see here the March 2022 open meeting agenda. This is on the FCC website, and they're covering these different issues. A couple of them are related to broadband service. So they say we're examining digital discrimination. So this is part of the digital equity kind of pieces of the broadband bill. You've got the broadband equity access and deployment program that's $42.5 billion or so, and equity is specifically named in there, and the FCC is supposed to have a part of that as far as ensuring that. So it says here the Commission will consider a notice of inquiry seeking public comment on what rules the Commission should adopt to prevent digital discrimination and ensure all people in the United States has equal access to broadband. So that's part of what they're going to cover in the agenda. But today I wanted to talk more about this second part here. We're facilitating the deployment of broadband infrastructure. We will take up a rulemaking exploring ways to expedite the resolution of pole replacement disputes by establishing clear standards for when and how utilities and attachers must share in the cost of pole replacement that is precipitated by a new attachment request. So that's basically what they're going to be covering. And then I will show you here the document. I'll go ahead and link to the two documents that I'm showing. So you see here is a fact sheet followed by their notice of rulemaking, or second notice of rulemaking. So fact sheet says accelerating wireline broadband deployment by removing barriers to infrastructure investment. Second, further notice of proposed rulemaking, and it mentions what this is doing. I think this is good to look over. So it says the second further notice if adopted would seek comment on ways to facilitate the resolution of pole replacement and pole attachment rate disputes, including with respect to, and then it mentions these particular issues that have been going on, or things that are not clear. So situations in which a pole replacement is not necessitated solely by a new attachment request, whether and to what extent utilities directly benefit from the various types of pole replacements, and if the Commission should establish standards for when utilities should be required to pay a proportional share of pole replacement costs. So again, this would be somebody like a cable company requesting access, and should the utility that has the pole have to pay some of those replacement costs. The costs and benefits of early pole replacements or retirements. Specifically, number one, whether requiring utilities to pay a portion of the cost of pole replacement would better align the economic incentives between communications attachers and utilities. And two, whether such a requirement would positively or negatively affect negotiations of pole attachment agreements and broadband deployment. So a big part of what they're trying to do is make sure that there are not impediments to getting broadband infrastructure deployed because of these disputes. So this is what they're covering. Measures the Commission could adopt to avoid and expedite the resolution of pole replacement disputes, and the scope of refunds ordered by the Commission when it determines that a pole attachment rate, term, or condition is unjust and unreasonable. So those are the things that they want to bring up in this meeting and go over. And then that's followed by the second further notice of proposed rulemaking. This is a very long document that I'm not going to read to you. I am going to show you just a few sections just so you're aware what's in here, and then you can go download that if you'd like. I'll put the links up there. So here are the three basic topics that they're covering. Again, determining the applicability of cost causation and cost sharing, allocating costs when utilities directly benefit from the pole replacement, because that does happen. If, again, one provider wants to attach to another provider's pole, that is a benefit to the person that owns the pole if they have to replace it. Avoiding and resolving pole replacement disputes. And then in procedural matters, that's where you would find if you wanted to comment on this, you can comment on this document. It says here, this comment, and I guess maybe what goes on in the meeting in March, 30 days after publication in the Federal Register, or 45 days after publication, reply comment date, 45 days after publication in the Federal Register. And I'll read through a little bit in this intro, and then I'm going to show you one example of what they are, kind of questions they're prompting. They provide a lot of information here about here's what we'd like to know, or if we think this is an issue, and people could read through this, and if you got a dog in this hunt, so to speak, then you may want to look into this. Since 2011, the Commission has undertaken a series of reforms of its pole attachment rules with aim of making access to poles faster, easier, safer, more predictable, and more affordable to help speed the deployment of broadband infrastructure and enhance the ability of utilities and attachers to successfully negotiate attachment agreements. In the second further notice, we seek comment on whether further reforms are necessary to provide regulatory certainty, and that's really what they're trying to do here. With regard to pole replacement, specifically with regard to the allocation of costs for pole replacements. January 2021, the Wireless Competition Bureau issued the pole replacement declaratory ruling. So this was back in January of last year. They issued this ruling, clarifying that it is unreasonable and inconsistent with Section 224 of the Communications Act, the Commission's rules, and past Commission precedent for utilities to impose the entire cost of a pole replacement on a requesting attacher when the attacher is not the sole cause of a pole replacement. The Bureau found that the clarification of the pole replacement declaratory ruling was necessary to address inconsistent utility practices with respect to the allocation of pole replacement costs. So that was meant to try to clarify some things and make things more consistent, but it sounds like there needs to be more clarification. We issued this second further notice to seek comment on the universe of situations. So lots of that's what happens when you make rules, right? You make rules thinking about a few situations, and then other situations, a whole universe of situations come up, and you have to then determine what you're going to do about those. So that's what they're trying to clarify. So they seek comment on the universe of situations where the requesting attacher should not be required to pay for the full cost of a pole replacement, and the proper allocation of costs among utilities and attachers in those situations. So that's kind of the intro to that. And then they give a lot of background here that you can read through. And then I was going to show you just an example of the very first category here, and one of the things that they're asking. So this again is the first category, A here, determining the applicability of cost causation and cost sharing. In the pole replacement declaratory ruling, when a new attachment request precipitates a pole replacement, but the pole must also be replaced for other reasons, the pole replacement is not necessitated solely by the new attachment, and all of the parties that benefit from the replacement must share proportionally in the cost, including utilities. We seek comment on whether there are additional situations in which a pole replacement is not necessitated solely by a new attachment request. Is it possible for a future planned pole replacement to serve as grounds for concluding that the pole must be replaced for other reasons? In other words, when somebody comes to, maybe the pole, maybe they know the pole is going to have to be replaced in 2 years, and then somebody comes today and says, hey, we need to attach on here. Do they replace it sooner, and then who shares on the cost of that? For example, I think that's what it says here. For example, if the utility has already scheduled the requested pole for replacement 1 or 2 years after the new attachment request. I knew that sounded familiar. I read it already. 1 or 2 years after the new attachment request is made, could we deem that known and scheduled replacement as necessary at the time that the new attachment request is made, and therefore consider the replacement of the pole to not be necessitated solely by the new attachment? Should the Commission codify the definition of necessitated, there we go, solely for the purposes of section whatever, and if so, what should that definition be? So that's kind of an example of just one question that they're asking that they want to discuss in this meeting. I don't think maybe they're going to discuss all these questions, I don't know. But they certainly list a lot of them here. You can see I'm scrolling down. There's lots in here to read through, lots of suggested, again, we seek comment on this, how to identify and quantify the costs of a pole replacement that are proportional to the direct benefit obtained by utility from pole replacement that is not necessitated solely by a new attachment request. So lots of things in here. And then you saw there were 3 different sections. And then again, towards the middle of the document in that section that I've pointed out, somewhere in here is where you can file. I think I passed it. Whereas I did highlight it so I could find it later. There it is. Here, filing comments and reply comments. So you can, if you have a dog in this hunt, if you are a utility or if you are somebody that needs to attach to utility poles, if you're going to be deploying broadband, then you probably want to be reading through this, and it would be good to attend that public meeting, and you might have comments that you want to submit, and here's where you can submit those comments. Again, those dates that were at the front end of this document were listed there. So you've got electronic filers, paper filers. Paper filers can be sent first class or overnight commercial, etc. People with disabilities, etc. So there's your filing information right here. So again, in those dates, if you were going to file, comments would be accepted by, what was it? Right here. So comment date 30 days after publication in the Federal Register, and then reply comment date. So there'll be comments, and then there can be reply comments after that, and that would be 45 days or another 15 days where reply comments can take place. So this is good. Again, this has been an ongoing issue for certain providers. I know Charter, I think it was Charter, was having issues in one particular area where they've been trying to get pole attachments, and the provider in that area was kind of dragging their feet. I think in that particular case, the provider may have been dragging their feet because they also were going to be providing broadband. So they're out there trying to get their own broadband in the ground, and then they've got somebody else trying to come in and attach those poles and do it. So I think that was probably the reason there. So they're trying to make this so that we don't have this be an impediment to broadband. So we've got all of this broadband money. A lot of it's being released right now through ARPA, through the Consolidated Appropriations Act, through RDOF, through Reconnect funds. So all these funds are now being released, and then you've got future funds coming out with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. They want to get all of this taken care of, so that's what this meeting is about. This next meeting in March, and what was the date on that meeting? March, where is it? Is it in here? Doesn't say. It's in, I think it was like March 15th. I'll put it in the comments. So again, I will post a link to these 2 documents that I looked at, and I'll mention when that date is if this is something of interest. So thanks for joining me. I hope it was helpful. Give me a thumbs up on the video and subscribe to our channel. Just hit the subscribe button on YouTube, click the little bell, and you'll be notified when I'm live. And that's every day with broadband deployment news. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.